Hello everyone, my name is Emma and welcome to my semester roundup, but more than a semester roundup, it's sort of a recap of my favorite books that I've read this semester, including books I read for fun, so it's just sort of like a quarterly I don't even know. It's not even really a wrap-up. It's the best of the best. Which is me. I'm the best of the best. Do you know that? Not really, just kidding. So yeah, I want to talk about favorite books I've read, including books I've read for school and books I've read for funsies. Most of it's been for school, though, to be honest. Okay, let's get started. Woo! The first couple books I want to talk about I read for my chemistry mystery class, which half of it went really well, and the other half didn't. Can you guess which half didn't go well? It's the chemistry stuff. Emma's not a chemistry person. But the English part was really fun, and we read a bunch of books by Dorothy L. Sayers, meaning 3 books by Dorothy L. Sayers, who I'm writing about. She's my focus for a research grant I got that I'm doing this summer, which is very exciting and a lot of work, but I'm very excited about it. And we read 3, and there's 2 that I really, really liked, and those 2 are Busman's Honeymoon and Gaudy Night. So Gaudy Night is sort of the 3rd time we see Harriet Vane, who is Lord Peter Wimsey's female counterpart. Lord Peter Wimsey is the main character throughout this whole series. He's sort of the Hercule Poirot of the Dorothy L. Sayers main mystery series. And Gaudy Night is the sort of, I would say, the second most substantial showing of Harriet Vane, meaning that you see her and Peter interact, but it's the 3rd time you see her in general. So Gaudy Night follows Harriet as she goes back to her old women's college, which is really cool because I go to women's college, at Oxford, and basically some shady things have been happening, and she is left to deal with them, or her fellow peers or professors or the people around her want her to help deal with it. She's an alumna, but she sort of gets pulled into this drama, or pulled into this mystery of who is leaving these awful messages and kind of awfully written hate mail to people around campus. And she gets pulled into it, and the coolest thing about this book is it's very much Harriet on her own. Although Lord Peter Wimsey comes in and helps her out, and they figure out the mystery together, it's very much a Harriet-centered book. It says a lot of interesting things about the educational system. It says interesting things about women's education, and what it's like to go to a women's college. And although this book was written in the 1920s, or the 1930s, in that era, it felt very true to my own experience being at a women's college, meaning that you deal with the gossip and all of the things that people have and their negative connotations of a women's college, but you also deal with a strength and a community that comes from being at a school full of women. It's a really fantastic book, and you also have fantastic character development. One of my favorite things about Dorothy L. Sayers is she writes characters so well. They're never underdeveloped, they're never overdeveloped, they're perfectly in the middle, and I love it. The next book is the book right after Gaudy Night, which is Busman's Honeymoon. Spoiler alert. I don't know, whatever. It's a spoiler alert, but whatever. Our girl, Harriet Vane, gets married to Lord Peter Wimsey, and this is about their honeymoon. This book focuses more on Lord Peter Wimsey's development. This is the last book in the entire series, and you see, or the last, important book in the entire series, but you see him dealing with a lot of trauma, a lot of post-traumatic stress from his time in World War I, or World War II, a war, I think it might be World War I, as they're on their honeymoon, and of course something bad happens, there's a murder, and they have to solve it, or feel like they need to solve it. It's a very interesting case study in Lord Peter Wimsey of trauma, and how Harriet deals with that as his partner, and how she helps him cope. It's very beautiful and touching and dark, but very hopeful and wonderful, and yeah. So, Dorothy L. Sayers. Next, I want to talk about a book that I read for funsies very recently, and it's this book called Funny Girl. I'm not going to do a full review, and I'm probably not even going to put it in a wrap-up because I'm talking about it here, but it's by Nick Hornby. I'm a fan of Nick Hornby, but I'm not like a giant fan of him. So, when I came across Funny Girl, I was like, ooh, what is this? Because it's a little different than the rest of his novels. Nick Hornby tends to write about sort of 30-something-year-old man-child, I don't know the plural of man-children, dudes who haven't really quite grown up yet. But Funny Girl couldn't be more different. It's a historical novel, meaning it's set in the 1960s in England. It's about a girl named Sophie Straw. Well, she becomes Sophie Straw. Before that, she's just little old, oh gosh, what's her name? I don't remember. Beatrice? Barbara. I don't know why I thought it was Beatrice. Barbara. And Barbara's from Blackpool, and she comes to England, and she wants to be the next Lucille Ball of British comedy, and she ends up changing her name to Sophie Straw to be in the spotlight, and it's about British comedy in this era. It's about being a woman in British comedy. It's about writers and producers and how they all interact. It also touches on themes or touches on issues of at the time being a homosexual in London and England at the time, which was illegal, and you went to prison, and it has lots of interesting layers. All in all, it's a very fun book. It's a very easy book. It's like candy. It just kind of flies through, but it isn't unsubstantial, and I really enjoyed it. It's what I kind of needed. I needed that little breath of fresh air. It's really, really, really great. The ending is less so great, but it's still pretty wonderful. Next, I want to talk about this book, The Magician's Land by Lev Grossman, a book I read for fun. Maybe I read more books for fun than I thought. The Magician's Land is the second book in the Magician series. I won't go into it too much because I don't want to spoil anything, but I loved this. I loved this so much. What I love about The Magicians is how it plays with fantasy sort of staples, how it subverts them or thinks about them in interesting ways, and how Lev Grossman does this. He loves fantasy, you can tell that, but he also plays with fantasy in very interesting, dark ways. He has very ambiguous characters. Characters you're not necessarily supposed to like or hate, but you're supposed to root for them. And I really like that, because I think there's this idea that you have to like the character, and the character has to be perfect for you to root for them. And what I love about this is that I root for Quentin, and I sometimes cannot stand him, but I root for him. He's like a buddy, he's a friend. Lev Grossman writes such interesting, complex characters, and I just love it. I love it. I love this book. So good. So great. Next, I want to talk about a book that I absolutely loved, and I don't know where my copy is, but it's called Rules of Civility by Amor Towles. I read this, it was the first book I read this year. It's about 1920s, 1930s actually, New York. It's about this woman who's trying to make her way through the business world and trying to make her way, well, not really in the business world, in the magazine world. It's about her relationships with people. And I won't go into too much detail because honestly I've forgotten a lot of it, but I really loved it. I loved it a lot. And if you haven't read it, read it. I've realized recently I love historical, like, 19th century, well, 20th century, fiction is one of my favorite things. Okay, so we're going to get down to the end. I know this is going to probably be a longish video. I want to talk about Shades of Grey by Jasper Fforde, a book that I loved. I listened to this on an audiobook. It took me a long time because it's a long audiobook, but it's fantastic. I love Jasper Fforde. He writes, or is it Fjorde, or is it, how do you say it? Is it Ford? I don't know. He writes really funny, whimsical, immersive books. I think he's one of the most talented writers writing today. He's so exciting and interesting, and if you like things that are quirky, Jasper Fforde's your dude. He's the guy you should read. Shades of Grey is a world based on color theory, and if you know anything about color theory, it's very boring, but somehow he makes it so exciting and interesting and fun. His books really push you in right away, and you have to get used to this world. I like that he does this. It's never over-explained. It's something that you have to sort of trust Jasper Fforde, and you have to sort of allow yourself to let go and say, oh, he's going to tell us when he tells us what this means. I think that's really cool and says something about how he feels about readers, which is that readers can handle it. Readers can handle being a little confused, and I think that's really cool. I loved Shades of Grey. And then I want to talk about, I think, 3 more books. I'm sorry, guys, and then we'll be done. Bound Feet in Western Dress, which is a book I read for a class called Women in Asian Africa, and it's by Peng Mei Natasha Chang, and it's written about her great aunt who, it's a nonfiction book about her great aunt who lived in China right before, or I mean quite a bit before the Communist Revolution, and it's about her being a young woman and her dealing with the conflicting forces of modernity and traditional Chinese culture. It's very powerful. It's very interesting. It was written in the 90s. It's really great. And if you like memoirs, this is such a great memoir, and I can't recommend it enough. Okay, and then the next to last book is a book that I thought that I liked more than I did, but then I realized that I did actually really like it, so it all worked out. And that is All the Birds in the Sky by Charlie Jane Anders. I really like this book. I don't have a lot to say about it, because I think a lot of people have said better things than me, but I thought it was really fun, and it helped me break a reading slump. So for me, it's like top dog. You know, the books that help you break reading slumps, even if you hate them, hold a special place in your heart, right? I don't know. And then finally, I want to talk about this book, and that is Anne of the Island by Ellen Montgomery. I love this series. I love Anne. I've talked about my love for Anne, but I loved this. I love Anne and Gilbert. I think they're one of the best couples in fiction ever. I love how much they respect each other. I love so much how they care for each other. I think their relationship is a really great depiction. I think it's a very healthy relationship. I really appreciate that. I really appreciate that because in today's world, we get a lot of unhealthy depictions of relationships that are sort of romanticized, and this never feels like, you know, even though it is romanticized, it doesn't feel like an unhealthy depiction. So it's really cool and great, and I don't have much else to say, but I loved it so much. So that is my semester roundup. I didn't talk a lot about school books because I read a lot, but there weren't a lot that stood out to me. I read a lot for my World War I class, but I did a video about that, so I feel like I've already said what I wanted to say about those books, and I really liked a lot of them. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you're still in school, let me know some of your favorite books that you read, or maybe just some of your favorite books that you read in general this past few months. Okay.